If you're planning an experimental study, the way you set the study up in the beginning will help make sure that the results you come up with are believable. I'm going to walk you through a clear roadmap for designing experiments that are going to actually help you answer your research questions. I'm Steve Tippins. I've been in academia for over 30 years, served on over 300 dissertation committees, and helped hundreds of people finish their dissertations. We're going to begin with the concept of designing your experiment. Simply, this means planning your study so that you can see what happens to an outcome and all the while controlling everything else as best you can. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the core pieces of a good experimental design that will help you finish your dissertation. You want this set up properly so that when you've conducted your study and get to your defense, the results are going to be reasonable. So an experimental design is best used when you're looking for what is the impact of A on B. Does A cause or correlate with or impact B? So if I provide students a school lunch, what is their impact on their test scores? Things like that. Ultimately, you want to see how different conditions impact an outcome. This is in contrast with things like a descriptive design, which ultimately is what is happening. Correlational, are these things related? So again, design of experiment is about causation, not relation. So we can say experimental design, going back, does X cause Y? Does eating chicken before every baseball game cause you to be a better batter? There actually was a baseball player who was a very good hitter, and he had chicken before every single game because one time he ate chicken and he played well. Now, that's not an experimental design. That's more of a superstition. But if we expand that out and looked at 500 baseball players and fed them chicken and then looked at how well their batting average was, that would be more of an experimental design. In your dissertation, we're going to go back now to alignment. Your problem, your purpose, your research questions all need to be in alignment. And if you're doing an experimental design, they need to be worded in such a way that an experiment needs to take place. The problem is we do not know the impact of a change in diet on baseball players' batting averages. So what are the core building blocks of experimental design? Some call the first thing a response variable. I've also heard it called a dependent variable. This is what you're measuring, the outcome. Going back to my previous example, the batting average. We could also look at test scores, blood pressure, breakdown rates for parts in a system, all kinds of things where we make an impact or a change in one area, what happens to the other thing that we're measuring, our response variable. Next, we have what some call control factors or inputs. I like to think of it as what are the knobs you're turning? What are the things you're changing a little bit to see what's going to happen over here? Examples could be, well, I'm going to change the curriculum a little bit. What's going to happen to test scores? You'll find a lot of places will look at things or people like time of day, and then what happens? What happens in an area that a lot of this research can be done is in the stock market because there's lots of data collected. So now I can look at, okay, time of day, what happens to stock prices? Or an announcement of something, an announcement of stock dividends. What happens to the stock price? These, all we're looking at is, I'm going to tweak something, change an input. What's the effect on my response variable? If you're looking for help, join our free dissertation help community. You'll get our 5-step dissertation acceptance framework, real support from veteran committee chairs, live calls, and Q&A sessions to start your journey. You don't have to do this alone. Just click the link below to join thousands of dissertation students who've decided to stop being stuck. We can also look at levels. And by that, I mean different versions of each factor. What if I go back to school lunch? What is the impact on middle school students? Now let's look at on elementary school student test scores or on high school student test scores. Staying with schools, what about urban schools versus rural schools? And then within that, even let's look at gender, males versus female. I've seen research looking at date of birth in the year, showing in sports performance, for example, people born earlier in the year are considered better athletes overall at younger ages than people born later in the year. Because think about it, a 5-year-old who's born in January is much more developed than a 5-year-old born in December on average. Finally, we want to look at replication and sample size. Your sample size needs to be sufficient. I can't just do this once, that baseball player who ate chicken. I've got to do it on many baseball players in eating chicken to see if it's chicken that's causing something. You want to repeat this. Again, multiple people. Can it be replicated means can someone else look at the situation that I set up and do it again? There's an old story about a scientist who had come up with, I think it was nuclear fusion, and published a paper and said, I can do this. And it was a huge breakthrough. Put all the conditions in the paper. Other people tried to replicate it because it was a huge breakthrough, and they couldn't replicate it. And he would do it again in his facility and be able to do it. And eventually he went out and tried to do it at other people's facilities. And he had scheduled a visit to 3 different places, and he couldn't do it at those 3 different places. So he called back to his lab saying, I'm coming back tomorrow. There's something weird happening. We got to figure this out because this needs to be able to be replicated. And it turns out that one of his senior graduate students was actually manipulating the results because he thought it was going to help him get a better job. So it needs to be able to be replicated to be a valid study. When you're doing an experimental design, you've got to have a sample size, and it's not just a guess. Yeah, I think I'll use 17. You do typically something known as a G-power test where you put in a certain number of variables, and that then comes back and tells you, based on the population you're looking at, the minimum sample size that you're going to need to be able to do a study that has results that can be meaningful. Now, when we talk about the design of experiments, some people talk about full factorial versus one factor at a time. Ultimately, quite simply what this means is full factorial, I'm going to change everything all at once. What's the outcome going to be? One at a time factors means I'm going to just change one factor, and then I'm going to see what happens. And the design is that you're going to choose of these is going to be based upon the research questions that you have. In a full factorial design, you're going to change all of the variables. It won't be random. It may be a structured system of changing them, but you're going to have all potential inputs being changed. Whereas in a one factor at a time, I'm only going to change one, and then I'm going to see what's going to happen. The choice of either of these 2 approaches depends upon the research question and questions that you're asking. I will say, if you're going to be changing many different things, it might mean your sample size might need to be larger. We've talked about the design of experiments. Now, let's be practical and think about how it would be implemented. One of the things I would be thinking about is how much time do I have? The more time I have, the more complicated something can be. How much access to data is there? Remember, I said if you're doing a full factorial design, you might need a larger sample size. In your IRB approval, you're going to a school, your school's IRB approval, and you may be going to another institution if you're using respondents from their institution or data from their institution. What are their requirements about design and or sample sizes or who's in a sample? Because you're going to find out if you're going to do studies of experimental designs on, for example, minors or pregnant women or prisoners or members of the military, it's going to be much harder to get IRB approval. You want to be able to consider as many factors as possible at the beginning. because you may find out you're not doing a true experimental design. You may end up doing a quasi-experimental because you aren't able to control as many variables as you might need to in an experimental design. You really want to be clear on what you can control. I worked with a student once and they were dealing with the military, and they assured me many times over that they could get access to the data. And then a new commander came in, so they had to deal with a new commander. And then that commander put some new requirements in. And then that ran into their time limit at the school. And the new commander went on vacation and was ready to sign finally when he came back. But that was a week after the student's time period was expiring at the school. Interestingly, the school a month before that said, oh, we're going to actually add an extra term in for everybody. So he was supposed to be kicked out of school, and was kicked out of school because the extra time period didn't start till 3 weeks later. And I wrote and said, please let him stay in. And they said, no, can't do it. So he actually had to leave school, petition to come back to school to then get in and be able to finish his degree, which he did, but, control for as many things as you can. So he never would have run into those problems if he actually was able to get the data from the military organization. A real clear takeaway on this is it may take a lot more time than you think. And if it is going to take more time, what are the implications of taking more time? Think about that ahead of time instead of panicking at the end. One thing you see many times in a true experiment is a control group, meaning I'm going to give a treatment to one group and not a treatment to another group. Well, if you can't have a control group, you're not doing an experimental design. It's probably quasi-experimental. It's just be clear up front. Committees approve quasi-experimental designs all the time. Just be clear up front with what you're doing and know what you're going to be able to do, because we don't want you getting committee approval, spending months trying to do this, and now having to go back to the committee, get it reapproved, potentially back through the IRB, and wasting lots of time and money, which is why when I'm talking to people, one of the questions I ask right up front is this doable? Can you get access to this data? Will this design actually allow you to do your study, answer your questions in a reasonable time period? So if you have an experimental design, that can be a very powerful study if you can truly meet the requirements of an experimental design. If you aren't meeting the requirements and you're saying an experimental design, you're going to get criticism from many people, and it's going to be hard for a committee to approve. So understanding the parameters of a design like this are highly important for you reaching your goal and finishing.